Introduction. In ancient Egypt, powerful leaders called pharaohs controlled the lands. The people of ancient Egypt honored these rulers both during their reign and during their believed afterlife. In 1922, archaeologists discovered the tomb of a pharaoh. Inside a small burial chamber, they found three coffins nested inside each other. The smallest coffin was made of solid gold and held the king's mummy. A mummy is a body that has been preserved after death to prevent it from decaying. On the mummy's head was a magnificent golden mask. Jewelry and good luck charms lay on the mummy and in the wrappings that protected it. Other rooms of the tomb were filled with statues, weapons, furniture, and even a chariot. These artifacts have much to teach us about this ancient civilization. For example, the objects left behind told archaeologists that this tomb belonged to the famous pharaoh called King Tutankhamun, whom historians often refer to by his nickname, King Tut. The treasures in King Tut's tomb provided a unique glimpse into ancient Egypt. Other pharaohs also left behind rare riches and artwork. Many of these pharaohs ordered great monuments to be built to celebrate their lives and accomplishments. In this lesson, you'll learn about three significant periods of ancient Egyptian history, and then you will meet four pharaohs who ruled during these periods. Learn what ancient Egyptians accomplished and explore some of the monuments they left behind. Ancient Egypt and its rulers. Ancient Egypt had three periods of stability and unity under the rule of pharaohs. Historians call these three periods the Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, and the New Kingdom. The Old Kingdom lasted from about 2700 to 2200 BCE. During this time, early pharaohs set up a strong central government. They also had great pyramids built as tombs for themselves. Some historians call this time the Age of the Pyramids. The Middle Kingdom, about 2000 to 1800 BCE, is sometimes called the period of reunification because it follows years of chaos and disunity. During this era, Egyptians enjoyed many great achievements in literature, art, and architecture. The New Kingdom is often called Egypt's Golden Age. During this time of peace and stability, ancient Egypt's power reached its height. Rulers like Thutmose III expanded the empire far up the Nile River into modern-day Sudan and into the Levant, which is the coastal region at the eastern end of the Mediterranean Sea. Religion played a central role in Egypt's social and political order. Pharaohs were believed to be gods. They owned all the land and were responsible for their people's well-being. They were kings, generals, and religious leaders all combined. During the Old Kingdom, only pharaohs were thought to enter an external afterlife, so their tombs were built to last. Many objects were buried with the pharaoh for use in the next world. The pharaohs directed the building of other monuments to glorify their power. Let's learn more about these structures and the pharaohs who ordered their creation. King Khufu, the pyramid builder. The pharaoh Khufu ruled from about 2551 to 2528 BCE during the Old Kingdom period. Today, he is best known for the architect of a famous pyramid. Not much is known about Khufu. Some stories describe him as a cruel, harsh ruler. Others say that he was powerful but kind. Historians do know that Khufu helped establish the pharaoh as a central authority. For example, he maintained strict control over Egypt's food supply. He oversaw the harvest and the storage of extra grain. He also controlled a large network of government officials who enforced his laws. Khufu emphasized his supreme power by declaring himself a god. Khufu and other Old Kingdom pharaohs had magnificent pyramids built as tombs for themselves and their families. Khufu was responsible for the building of the Great Pyramid at Giza, one of the wonders of the ancient world. The Great Pyramid sat at the center of a huge complex of temples, statues, monuments, and smaller tombs. It was made of more than 2 million stone blocks, perfectly fitted together. Inside, tunnels led to several burial chambers. The king's chamber had 6 roofs to hold up the weight of the stone layers above it. Building the Great Pyramid was an amazing feat. No one knows exactly how the Egyptians constructed it, but it took about 20 years to complete. Khufu had strict control of the project, organizing and feeding thousands of workers. The finished pyramid was a stunning monument to Egyptian engineering. King Senusret, patron of the arts. The pharaoh Senusret I ruled from about 1971 to 1926 BCE during the Middle Kingdom. He was a strong leader who ruled a stable, unified Egypt. Art, literature, and architecture flourished during his reign. The arts thrived during Senusret's rule. The pharaoh controlled mines filled with gold, copper, and gems such as purple amethyst. Artisans fashioned these materials into beautiful, highly detailed pieces of jewelry such as bracelets and necklaces decorated with stones like turquoise. Some of the greatest works of Egyptian literature were written during Senusret's reign. The story of Senue tells of a young official named Senue who overhears a plot to kill the pharaoh. Fearing for his own life, Senue flees Egypt. He thrives in his new land but grows very homesick. When a new pharaoh calls him home, Senue returns joyfully to Egypt. Senusret's greatest accomplishments were in religious architecture. He had many temples, shrines, and religious monuments constructed and improved. Perhaps Senusret's finest architectural achievement was the White Chapel. It was made of alabaster, a hard white stone. Some historians think that the chapel was originally covered in a thin layer of gold. Beautiful artwork decorated with the chapel's pillars. Carved scenes showed the pharaoh with various gods, birds and animals, and Egyptian symbols were depicted. Queen Hatshepsut, promoter of Egyptian trade. During the New Kingdom, the pharaoh Hatshepsut ruled Egypt from about 1473 to 1458 BCE. Hatshepsut was one of Egypt's first female pharaohs. Under her rule, Egyptian art and architecture flourished. Hatshepsut was also known for encouraging trade. One of her greatest accomplishments was her rise to power, since few women had ever become Egyptian pharaohs. Sobkneferu, another woman who had become pharaoh, had ruled a few hundred years before Hatshepsut. Initially, Hatshepsut shared power with her male relatives. However, she soon achieved sole leadership. Hatshepsut strengthened her position in several ways. She filled her government with loyal advisors. She demanded the same respect shown to male rulers. To enforce her status, she sometimes dressed in men's clothing, even putting on a fake beard male pharaohs wore. Artists were often instructed to portray her as a man. She also spread stories that her father was a god. As pharaoh, Hatshepsut promoted trade with other countries. Her biggest trade expedition was to the African kingdom of Punt, at the southern end of the Red Sea. More than 200 men and 5 ships brought gifts and traded goods to Punt. Hatshepsut left behind a large monument to her reign, a great temple at Deir al-Bahari. The main part of the temple was built into a cliff above the Nile River. At the entrance were 2 tall, thin monuments called obelisks. The entrance was also graced by 200 Sphinx statues. The Sphinx is a mythical creature with the body of a lion and the head of a man. Scenes from Hatshepsut's reign decorated the temple walls. Detailed carvings portrayed the great voyage to Punt and illustrated the valuable items the pharaoh's traders had brought back to Egypt. King Ramses II, leader and planner. The pharaoh Ramses II ruled from about 1290 to 1222 BCE during the New Kingdom. Called Ramses the Great, he is one of the most famous pharaohs. He reigned for more than 60 years, longer than almost any other pharaoh. He's best known for his military leadership and for overseeing the building of numerous monuments and cities. Ramses used his power to excess. He had over 100 wives and more than 100 children. Never shy about his importance, he had hundreds of statues of himself built through Egypt, some of which stood over 60 feet high. From a young age, Ramses was a fearless soldier, traveling alongside his father in various campaigns. Children often helped their parents with work. At the age of 10, Ramses became a captain in the Egyptian army, though he probably did not fight. Ramses tried to defend an Egyptian empire that extended north into Canaan. His most famous military campaigns were against the Hittite Empire and Anatolia, present-day Turkey. At the northern border, struggles with the Hittites were common. In his best-known battle, Ramses reached a standoff with the Hittites, even though he was greatly outnumbered. Ramses was also a peacemaker. He and the Hittites signed the world's first peace treaty, which lasted until the Hittite Empire collapsed around 1190 BCE. One of Ramses's greatest projects was the temple complex at Abu Simbel. The main temple was carved into the side of a cliff that was on a bank of the Nile River. Another temple at Abu Simbel honored the queen Nefertari. 4 giant statues of a seated Ramses framed the entrance to the main temple. The figures were carved right out of the rock face of the cliff and are among the finest examples of the artistic skill of Egyptian sculptors. The inside of the temple was also remarkable. Visitors passed through 3 large rooms called halls to reach the temple's main room. This room's altar contained statues of Ramses and 3 Egyptian gods. The temple was assembled so that twice a year the sun aligned with the entrance, allowing beams of sunlight to shine down the halls and illuminate the statues. Ramses demanded more temples and monuments built than any other pharaoh in history. When he died, he was buried in the tomb that he had ordered workers to construct solely for him. His mummy is one of the best preserved bodies ever found.